So Thomas, where is everybody? Tell us why.
There's a major flood in California. It's a big shitstorm that just arrived.
Well, this has worked to our advantage, really, because we've got free run of the
True
factory.
behind the scenes.
I do not have to yell over the machinery. I can whisper if you want.
Beautiful.
You can use a quiet voice.
Right,
But
well, let's do it.
everybody's gone because there was a flood in California, which happens every 3,000 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the day that we came.
Welcome to the 3,000-year flood.
So, well, where do we begin?
We're beginning in what I call the mill or the foundry. For the love of Ferraris, this is where the engine's made. This is the mill department. Raw lumber comes from different parts of the world, different thicknesses, different types of trees. We use swamp ash mainly for the base. Equatorial mahogany right up there for the mahogany. For the Majesty necks.
Right.
This is something new. This brown wood right here is alder, but this is the new roasted alder. Normally alder's a little bit lighter brown, a little more reddish, but now we're starting to use roasted alder.
What, across the board or on
no,
specific
just
models?
On specific models right now. They'll be in the future. You'll see them.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the key is on roasted alder. It's already like an aged aldered wood, so we think that it has that aged properties when we apply it to the guitar. It has a lot of ring, a lot of resonance.
It's been really popular on the necks, hasn't it?
Very popular. I would say 80% of our necks are figured, roasted, or roasted maple blanks. As you see, we have all these units of lumber that comes in. Their main job is when the raw lumber comes in is that they pull the units out and they will bring it over to what we call a double cutter planer over here. And this machine has knives on both sides, so what it does is they run the rough lumber that comes in, and it actually cleans both sides at the same time. So you can kind of see what you're working with as far as the grain pattern, if you're trying to match up the grains on two pieces of bodies, on two pieces of wood. And from there, they'll match it up, and you can see they started working on this before they left, and they have this alder. This is normal alder that they're working on, probably for the Lukes or the Kaizen right now. And they're going to be cutting them into blanks for a certain size that will go onto one of our robot cells. They've got, since most trees are not that wide anymore, we usually make them out of 2 to 3 pieces blanks. Here they're making 3-piece blanks of alder, and usually when it's 3 pieces, it's going to be an opaque color because the grain patterns do not match up very well, unless it's a really, really thick vintage burst, then you can hide whatever you need to hide.
Or if you're really lucky.
Yeah, if you're really lucky, but most of the time the patterns doesn't match up because once you apply the base coat on it, they're different shades. They relieve different shades, and they just don't have that same thing. Usually they try to use the same piece of wood and book match it like that.
Sure.
And so they'll go ahead and put these on, and they'll put them on the joiner, which cuts the grooves for them. And then here, after they're jointed and ready to go for the size, they'll go ahead and put it on the C-clamp, the carousel clamp actually. And you can see this was this morning's sessions before they left. They glued some of the alders right here and some of the Majesties, the through neck Majesties. And they'll stay on here for 4 hours. It's water-based glue, it dries pretty quickly. And then once you have a body blank that's ready to go, we'll swing back over this way. This is the storage of glued up body blanks that are ready to go on the next processes with the robot cell. Here you have a kume, here you have ash, and here you have basswood. And then these are the alder blanks that they'll be using for the Kaizens.
So before we get into the robotics stage, you said you've been here how long now?
25 years in March.
And how much have you seen it change in that time? I mean, when did the robotics become just part of the everyday
Well,
process?
when I first started working here, we had a robot cell in the buffing department, or just started to apply that robot cell, so probably 23 years ago.
Yeah.
And these ones are, the first one, I'm going to say it is 10 years ago. I can find out that later. And then we have the body robot cell, and then the next robot cell was probably 3 to 4 years after that.
And how long did the implementation take?
Oh,
Because it's just such a strange thing. It seems so primitive still, even in that first gluing stage, and then suddenly it becomes art in this most insanely high-tech way.
Exactly. And I think because this is all done in-house, mostly designed in-house. Obviously, not for the robot, but all the tools and fixtures that were all done here.
Yeah.
That was probably a 2-year process to get it going. Maybe less. I couldn't remember.
It's all a blur now.
But the thing with this robot cell is that you can apply the bodies in those little shells right there, and then it can work at nighttime. So it'll work till like 3 in the morning, and then from a body blank that is applied into the cell, you can see some of the first stages of it, how it's starting to carve away of it. And then it still has to flip it over and do the back side. So it can only do one side at a time. And as it's doing one side, or as the tool's cutting the wood, the robot will pick up the body that's already finished, and then over here you have these red columns that drop down, and there's actually drills underneath there, and the robot will grab the body and push down on the drills. And those drills are the cavity holes for the wires and strap buttons and other things, accessories like that.
Yeah.
It used to be done by manual, by hand drill, and with a jig like this. Now the robot will grab the body and it'll just push it down on the angle it needs to be. Pretty fascinating.
It's essential now because Drew was telling us earlier that the Kaizen has no right angles on it whatsoever.
No,
so all of those curves you need
yes.
maximum consistency for.
Exactly. And you can see once the instrument enters the body cell like that, it finishes out like this. So if you're looking from a raw piece of wood like this, it comes out looking like this right out of the cell. As we go through the factory, normally it's buzzing and sawdust and noise. You can see that this is a Majesty that's in mid-production that stopped, and it stopped at the tool right there. But if you look up there, those are all the different cutters to cut all the different angles and shapes on the Majesty.
Just for the Majesty?
Just for the Majesty.
So it has its own entire set of tools?
Yeah. And this is a many-step process to make the Majesty. The body is just glue up the blanks, stick in the robot, you have a body. But with the Majesty, it's both body and neck, so there's a lot more steps involved.
So is this still the most complex design that you guys currently make?
Yeah, as far as body and neck. And then, I mean, as far as designing the Kaizen, I was sure that was just as complex, but since it's held down by suction, you have to find areas where it can work. And that's why this is all held down by suction.
That's what you're paying for?
Yeah.
Its own set of tools in production. How many man hours go into that thing as well?
Ooh, Drew would have to comment on that, but I think there's many, yeah. Many hands. Here is a stack of Majesties that have the bare bones body to it. Obviously you could see these are the wings, this is the neck, and actually since it's an angled headstock, the headstock has not been glued on yet.
Right.
And once that takes place, and this is actually the headstock right here, they're numbered. You can see, so 10 and 10 is over here somewhere. So we try to match up the color of the mahogany with the color of because this is a smaller piece of wood than this one currently.
Sure.
So, and that way the grain pattern is the same, that it's from the same piece of mahogany, because sometimes mahogany can be a lot redder or a lot browner, and then if you have a transparent color, it doesn't hide, it doesn't blend very well. And the next step over here is the neck cell robot. So we have that robot, which actually we give them names. That robot is called Big Bird because it looks like yellow and it's got a beak like Big Bird. And this one is Medusa. You can hear it sucking. It's instead of what clamps, it's actually using suction power to hold down the neck. And the neck process is much longer than the body process. The body process is just a piece of wood and gets carved out. The neck process is cut the wood, slot it, truss rod it, glue the truss rod seal over it, glue the neck back on it, stick it back on the robot, pull it back out, slot it, cut the fret line, stick it back on the end, and profile it. So there's probably...
And then oiling it, right?
Well, in another part of the thing, yeah. But as far as to get it out of the mill, there's probably, 7 times more processes than it is on a body.
Right.
So these are different tools and sanding belts for the neck department. Obviously, we have the swinging belt. This applies the radius on the fretboard. You can see right here, the 12-inch radius. So when they apply the neck down on there, they swing it out, and the neck's right here, and they'll swing it out and then as you swing it, it swings a 12-inch radius on it. And we have different radius. You drop it down, it's a 10-inch radius. This is another old tool. This is the fret slot tool. Same thing. We have a tool that drops down in here, and then we close the cage, and it comes down and it cuts the fret slots on the fretboard.
And you've been using that tool for how long, do you think?
As long as I've been working, as far as I know. And I think that is for the bass guitar.
Right.
Because I see the spacing on it's much wider, right?
Yeah.
And you know, obviously you can see this has that infinity fretboard. Starts from here and just keeps going.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That's a really novel thing, and like Drew said earlier, if he hadn't have pointed it out, I wouldn't have noticed. But once he did, it's all you can really see.
Yeah, and then you see the face dots better. On
yeah. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. As we go through this part of the cell, this is actually kind of a new design we come up with, a horseshoe. So as it goes through here, it applies as the next needed. So it goes like a factory thing. So here is where they apply the frets, the stainless steel frets on the Kaizen or whatever they're doing today. Pretty basic. It's pretty primitive. They apply the fret on there and they hit it with the hammer, and the frets, all frets have a tang on it which bites into the wood, and then they apply, so it doesn't pop back out because ebony's really tough and hard. They'll apply super glue on the wick the ends, and that way it holds it in there.
So how do you guys structure it? So would today be a Kaizen day only, or do you do them in batches that way, or?
Yes, we do it in batches. Yeah. We don't do we do it as the orders come in, but as of this last 3 months, it's just been it's been pushed for the Kaizens. Right. So there's a lot of Kaizens going through the factory right now. It's the same thing when we do with the Majesties. When we had that big push of Majesties, it's Majesties because everybody wants to get a hold of them.
Yeah, of course.
And they're very, very difficult to make.
Yeah, and you want to make as many as you can.
Many
in
as
the
you can,
space
because
time possible.
it is revolutionary for us, and hopefully for the rest
It's
of
even the time it takes to put in the correct, radius thing and the cutting frets.
It was a challenge because it's a fan fret, and then you have an endless finger, radius fingerboard. So it was a challenge for us to build all the tools for this.
And you've never done a fan fret before?
We did it on the Majesty 8-string.
Okay.
But that was all in one collusive. This is a neck by itself.
Sure.
So this has been a challenge. So they had to tool up and to teach everybody how to do this type of thing, because they've been using regular common radius on there. So it's been a challenge, but we've obviously, as you go to the factory, you'll see a lot more Kaizens, and we'll overcome the challenges. This is where we store the fretboards. Of course, we have Indian East Indian rosewood, ebony from Gabon. This obviously comes from India. And then over here we have white figured maple, bird's eye, right here. Beautiful stuff. Roasted over here. There's more roasted base blanks over here. Those are the roasted fingerboards. That's roasted. That's the bird's eye. That's a beautiful bird's eye. It's almost illegal.
Yeah.
And how selective do you guys have to be with your neck maple? Because I've never really seen a Music Man that didn't have some level of bird's eye to it, and some flame in there.
Well, most of the signature guitars come with figured necks. There's some guitars that we still do with plain necks. Not very many, but most of them are figured. And so we ask our vendors, obviously send the best stuff you got. And we deal it from there.
Okay, Under the Tunnel of Love.
Under the Tunnel of Love. So this is our maple top, exotic wood area. This is where as you see the Access, or some of the John Petrucci, some of the Lukes, they all have a maple top, a figured maple top on them. Most of it's obviously Western figured maple, flame. You have your flames like this. And then you have your quilts right here. And what they do is actually they're book matched, right? When we get them in, they're book matched. So what they try to do is book match them and glue them. And you try to get the gaps on them like that. And you can see, watch, if you want to see a little camera right here, you can watch you can see how the maple just magically, the figured maple just magically appears. And same with the quilt right here. I just spray some H2O water on there.
The wet look.
So you give it the wet lip. And over here we keep our spalted tops. So this is diseased maple. Actually, this type of maple, same Western maple, but it has a bug that went in and kind of diseased this and gave this kind of look to it. So you can see there's some really,
I love the look of that. Though.
yeah, pretty funny stuff in here sometimes. I'm going to point it out, but sometimes there's some phallic stuff going on.
Yeah.
I mean, from what I know, you guys were one of the first brands to kind of popularize that.
I think so.
How long have you been using
I think we did that, and I think we did that
spalted?
with the roasted maple too.
Yeah.
Like we really went to town on the roasted maple and on the spalted stuff like that. I know PRS was doing some spalted stuff. They do a lot of carved tops, but we've really done that. And same thing with Buckeye Burl
On the Jason Reeves.
on the Jason Richardsons and
Yeah.
whatever parts right here. You could just see how beautiful that is.
Yeah.
Very expensive and very hard to harvest,
Stunning, yeah.
but it's beautiful stuff. And very fragile. It's really dry.
Yeah. Brittle.
I mean, it's the
Yeah.
the burl of
Yeah.
the tree, the bottom of the tree.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of these crevices right here, this is actually where the dirt is, right?
Yeah.
And this
Yeah.
is where all the rats and rattlesnake hang out. Maple top billets for the Sabre guitars and for the Majesties with full maple top Majesties. You see right there, they're all cut to size, 1/2 inch thick. And over here we keep all the glued up spots. So these ones once were a billet, we cut them in half and try to juxtapose them as best we can
Yeah.
on there. See some really unique shapes in there.
Yeah.
A lot of times you get some, sorry
Psychedelic.
about that. You get some eyes, some mouth,
Yeah.
you get the horns, little demonic in my opinion.
So someone could custom order this for any model that you.
No, these are
offer.
specifically for certain models
Okay.
right now. Like these are only going on the Majesty spalted tops and the BFR Sabres right now.
Okay.
So these are Majesty ebony fingerboards, waiting for glue ups. We actually laser cut our own inlays out. They call this Alante, which is kind of a plastic version of mother of pearl. So when you don't have to write get all this paperwork for the fishing game
Yeah.
to export it out.
Yeah.
It's plastic and it's beautiful.
It's
It
still
cuts
great, yeah.
good with the laser.
Yeah.
It really does. And over here is where we keep all our fret wires. All different
my God.
sizes, all different radiuses. You know, I think Petrucci's he has 15-inch, and then we have 12-inch, 10-inch, and then 9-inch radius. That gets punched down to 7-inch radius. So we keep all this in. Most of our fret wire is stainless steel now.
Yeah.
So now we're in, as a wood mill finishes their products and brings them over to the sanding department, they're actually a completed neck and a completed body from there as far as they can do. They
Yeah.
bring them over here. So they need to be sanded, and this is the sanding department where they actually do it. So the necks will come in. They'll go ahead and fill in the fret ends with ebony or powder dust right there, lacquer sticks. They'll bring them, the necks will be brought over to this area over here. Obviously, the wood shop doesn't do the final on it, so there's a lot of final sanding done here in this department right here. And this is where you have to get the final sanding done correctly, otherwise there's no turning back. And normally when the guys are here, these guys are pros, they know the feel of the radius, they know how far to sand back down before they get too thin,
Yeah.
and keep it not too thick either. They'll start doing a lot of sanding that the machine shop didn't do. There's some what we call hard lines right here, and they'll get rid of the hard lines and start smoothing them out to get ready for base coat prep. Because once it's base coated, that's it. You can't never go back.
No.
And obviously, it's a shame we can't see it, but how many guys are working in here? at one
1,
time?
2, 3, 4, and then we have maybe 2 or 3 guys here.
Right.
So as their delivery comes through, they'll go ahead and start rough sanding all the hard edges on here. It's basically with the guitar. On this side is the body blanks, and over here they do the necks.
Okay.
And if it's a Majesty, they'll do them on that side. You can see our little tools that we use, and they'll hand them down, and they'll basically take the sandpaper and go back and forth and go like this. It's muscle memory of the
Yeah.
radius.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the radius that put it on there, but it still has the lines from the ball end cutters that keep
Yeah.
cutting down the line, so they have to feel it a little bit. It's all but in my heel. I feel right there. It's blows my mind how they do that. I don't know
Yeah,
how.
well,
And
I'd love to.
consistently as well, yeah.
Love to have seen
consistent.
that.
Yeah, it's just consistently know what they're doing. I mean, and it takes about, I think it takes almost a year to, or 8 months to a year to somebody to
learn that
learn it
process.
and be
Yeah.
on the free range on it. It all depends on how good of a learner they are, but because there's all these different radiuses with all these different sizes.
Yeah.
You know, if we were just doing one neck all the time, that's easy. But as you see, we're doing a lot
You
different.
can't make it too easy, can you?
Correct. As they go down the department, this is just final sanding the bodies. So obviously there's a lot of detail. The differences in the detail, that's what we used to use all the time. We still do that. As far as in how or the craftsmanship of the bodies and necks are put together in this department, as far as how they're sanded, because you cannot go back. You can't add wood.
It's got to be done right, yeah.
You can take away wood, but you can't add wood. It's got its first staining on it. There's a 2-part stain on this, so this is the first of the stain. You can see right there, it's starting in the back of the neck on the Majesty. Obviously, we don't really care about here; it's all hidden. But this is the first stage of the staining. Just more sanding. So when the bodies get sanded and they're final inspected here, and they're still in the raw form, they actually get base coated into the next one. So they'll get 4 coats of polyester base coat.
Oh, more good smells.
Yeah. And this room is the supply bin room. So this is all the bodies and necks that have been base coated and sanded, and now these are basically ready to be painted. And this is where the work orders.
Specific temperature in here, or
No,
is this just a
there's no air conditioning. There's no climate control in this building because San Luis Obispo is pretty much a mild climate.
Yeah.
Our hot days are horrible sometimes. Our wet days.
It's the benefit of the roasting too, I guess.
Correct. There's not a lot of
stable.
dancing on the wood.
It's quite a selection there.
Yeah. You see Kaizens, they're all over the map, right? These are all Kaizens. These are in different stages, right? They just painted the headstock, so now they're waiting for the decal and silk screen on there.
And Drew was telling us earlier this arc was something that you'd never really done on headstock before.
No. The bongo a little bit. You can kind of see it right here. We've done it on the bongo, but not on the guitar. You can see it on the bongo.
That looks
So
great.
it has
I love the headstock.
This has more of a swoop than the bongo. It's actually the opposite direction, right? The bongo goes fat this way and thin, and goes fat to thin. So it's just the opposite of the bongo. Nice. So this is the booth 3 and 4. We do a lot of the sparkle finishes in here. We do a lot of the solid colors in here. You see here, you can see the Kaizen Spectra flares. It has that rainbow effect to it. We try to keep the sparkles and solid colors in here. You don't want to cross-contaminate them and then bring them in the other room.
Right.
So these are some of the bodies that have some kind of painting process on it, whether it's either a urethane sealer before they get into it, or they did the Kaizens and they put that matte finish over the Kaizens right there. You can see some of our beautiful colors here.
Yeah.
This is the hot box.
Yes, it is.
After the bodies are top coated, they arrive in here to harden up. The urethane hardens up.
Yeah.
They'll sit here for a day. Sometimes we use this room to kick off the paint so we can get ready for the next top coat session, but this stays consistent, I think, at 96 degrees.
This is what California should feel like.
Yeah.
Except today
Yeah, in the summertime, but not here. We got too much ocean around here.
Are there any drastic changes between the guitar and the bass bodies, or just because there's more mass to them?
Yeah, there's a lot of the bodies with a lot of the curves on them are harder to sand. Obviously, the basses go easy because they're flat on both sides, so it's just flat. You don't have to worry about the sides. Like so when you do a Jason Richardson, you have all these little tight nick in these parts right here.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more hard to sand, but for the most part, it takes I think it's about 40 minutes to sand a body. So the next department is going to be the buffing department. So this is the buffing department. So after the bodies have been sanded with the grits, the really super fine grits, they'll get onto this new robot. Not new, but our first robot. Her name is Ursula, and she buffs the bodies with the different types of buffing wheels and different type of compounds. Mm-hmm. The red compound's a little more aggressive, and the cream or beige compound's less aggressive. So, and each step is like bringing out the shine. So you have a reference. These bodies right here are just right off the robot. Obviously, you can see that it does about 95% of it, but there's still what they call the buffing lines and the haze on it. And so that actually has to be done manually, buffed off by hand. And that's why you have these opening wheels right
wheels,
here
Right.
with the different compounds right here.
Yeah.
So the next department we're coming to is the electronics department. So this is where you see the thousands of parts
that you have
to make,
buy.
you have to buy, and to make all the parts to go, the assemblies, sub-assemblies to go in the assemblies to go into the final instrument. Obviously we have our pickups right here that are just got wound, the Stingray pickups. We wind pretty much all our pickups are here except for the John Petrucci pickups. It's DiMarzio's.
Right. Yeah. Of course.
And then all our bass pickups and all the other guitar pickups except for the Albert Lee or anything that's DiMarzio. These are all the pickup winders. Obviously you can see these are the old ones from the original days back in the Fender days. They brought over from Leo Fender when he started Music Man. He brought his winders over, and then as we bought Music Man, we acquired these original winding pickup winders. Tried and true.
Yeah. Well, it works.
Yeah.
And again, how long did the transition take when you moved to these kind of more circuit board based?
It was pretty easy. For the most part, it was pretty easy.
Then you've got preamps to think about.
Oh yeah, preamps. Oh yeah, all the electronics. These are the new winders. A little bit more squared up, a little bit more robot looking. But they work, and you can program them from upstairs and calculate how many winds there need to be on these things. So this is, obviously that part was the setup, electronics, excuse me. This is now the setup department. As far as like all the parts that need to make in a guitar, pickups, bridges, preamp assemblies, they're all put together over here, and then they're brought onto this side, and it's kind of like a factory as they go down the line. So as you can see, all these chairs and tables, this is where they do all the fret jobs.
Okay.
And that's what we're known for a lot, is on
Yeah.
their necks. How smooth their necks are. A lot of time takes place right here. Crowning, leveling the frets, and then polishing the frets. And they have all the tools, the sandings, the gauges, to see if there's any forebow or back bow. Make sure that there's no high or low spots. Basically, they're leveling the frets out. And that's how they do that. They just go down the line like this.
And you said earlier on that you design.
Yeah,
all the
I
colours?
do a lot of the colors I do. I try to work with the painters and Scott Ball to come up with color concepts on what looks good on the guitar. You know, stainings and stuff like that. I try to do as many samples as I can. And
Is there anything you haven't yet managed to master that you want to?
I wanted to do like I don't know what they call it, fade staining or blend staining, where you blend an orange to a red to a
Oh, like a gradient.
gradient staining, and I've always wanted to do that, and I don't know if that's production friendly or not, but
They'll figure it out.
Yeah, we
There's
figure everything out.
There's a lot of brain power in this building.
Yeah, and well, I mean,
Not today, there's not.
Well,
and,
not
and
right.
make sure that if I can do it, then the factory can do it. So you can't.
Yeah.
If I do that one lucky time, well, then you got to make sure that everybody else can do
Yeah.
that around the boat. So as the guitars go down, or at least the bodies of the guitars go down here, you could see they start getting the parts in strap buttons, battery boxes.
Bridges and things.
Not bridges, not yet. They get parts to accept the bridges. They'll get like the pivot screws, and they all have work orders. So there's a matching body and there's a neck over there that match each other. So they try to time it to go down and meet in assembly. Here's where you have all the sub-assembly parts. Switches with the preamps on it, pickups, more preamps right here with the switches on them.
Yeah.
And they all have part numbers on them. So there's a bill of materials for the instrument. And they say they need to make a Stingray. Well, they'll take an MC 807X, and they know that goes in a Stingray with a 2H pickup on it. Same thing here. All the pick art assemblies are all inside here, all these little bags right here. The ones pickups that we make, so this pick guard's ready to go. You can see all these parts right here. They all have the bridges, the pick guards, the pickups, knobs, switches. So basically they're just waiting for the neck.
Yeah.
And hopefully as they come down the line, the necks will be in tune. And in this area right here is where the new setup bench has put these all together. So these benches right here are where they apply the neck and body together. They have all the different files to cut the nuts. This is where they apply the strings.
So
and then
more or less final assembly, right?
final assembly right here, and then of course they run through they adjust the bridge, saddle height, and then they run through the fingerboard with all the strings on it, make sure there's no dead notes, and then do the adjustment on the truss rod if needed.
Yeah.
Pretty standard for your guitar making, but we have the assemblers that apply the strings, and then we bring it, and the assemblers will bring it over here into these guys, and they'll start doing the fine tuning on them.
Sure.
So that way you just get production going. And then they all have the travelers on it. Tells you where it's going, and then from there they go into the next room, which is over here. They'll come on the carts, then once they're finished, and they'll get put in a case, boxed up. We have all the cases up here. This is all the stock where we keep the cases. Obviously, we're doing the new mono style cases now.
Yeah.
These are all guitars built, ready to go, ready to ship out. And deep, that's all, folks. That pretty much sums it up.